What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for yet another match review. One that I don't really want to bring for you today, but it is Arsenal 3, Tottenham 1 at the Emirates yesterday, 12:30 kickoff. Where do you want to start?
Let's go to the end then. Honestly, I don't want to be talking about this game.
Harry Kane slotted his penalty away beautifully well yesterday.
Beautiful penalty. Still top goal scorer in North London derbies and all good. No, but look, at the end of the day, we usually lose the Emirates. This is like what usually happens every season. We lose at the Emirates, they lose at our ground, so they still got to come to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium later on this season, and hopefully we can get our own back. Look, this game, there wasn't many surprises for me in this game. This pretty much went like very much in terms of the game plan how I was expecting. The only obviously turning points were Lloris's mistake and the red card. That kind of ruined it for us. But when you're talking about how the game went from the off, Arsenal came flying out the traps. I fully expected it. We were kind of riding out the storm. We restricted them to very low quality opportunities, which was of a positive. Look, no doubt about it, they were dominating possession. They were putting pressure on us, especially in the opening like 4 or 5 minutes. Like, I really was like, okay, we're going to be under the cosh. I think Martinelli hit the post. I think they were getting loads of set pieces, and they were putting us under the cosh. But we did obviously concede through Partey, but once that goal went in, we did settle and we did start to assert our game plan in terms of how we were going to hurt them, and I think we were doing it quite well. I think in that first half, obviously we got the goal, and which was from a good breakaway as well, apart from the penalty, which was a definite penalty. But we had so many opportunities. I was looking back at it. Someone posted a compilation of all like the wasted opportunities we had, which we didn't garner any
that's what the issue was, though, isn't it? Because in the final third, or even just before the final third, you know, Son is overhitting passes, Richarlison is overhitting passes, and I mean, if we get those opportunities right, which you have to do in a game like this when we're under the cosh for such long periods, because if you don't get those chances right, the game's going to go away from us, and that's what happened eventually. And I felt like there were opportunities for us actually. If we got the passes right, we could have gone into half-time with actual lead.
100%. And these are the things that the stats don't pick up, because you didn't register a shot on goal or anything like that. But if we were to get these things right, I think the players were in the right positions, or we were making the right runs. The execution of the passes were just not good enough, nowhere near good enough. And that's where we missed Kulusevski massively, 100%. And even if you go to the second half, Romero had a really good opportunity to square it to Son, and he decided to take on Saliba and gets tackled, and that could have been another opportunity where he could have got a shot on target. I'm not saying these would have definitely been goals, but when you're looking at chances created, looking at shots on goal, there would have definitely been a lot more opportunities for us to hurt Arsenal if we would have got these things right. We didn't get them right ultimately, and that goes to the quality. I don't think it goes to the playing game plan. You have to the players have to just look at themselves as to why they consistently were getting those things wrong. And I think that goes into the level of performance you put in, and that goes into the quality of the player. So you can't say you deserve more because you were getting it wrong, because you were getting it wrong. So you don't deserve anything for getting it wrong. That's the reality.
The fact of the matter is the result was a fair result yesterday, 3-1 to Arsenal. I believe that, and I think that but it's just a sense of frustration because we actually didn't play as badly as people are making out than we did in that first half. I mean, Arsenal were brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant for that opening 20 minutes. And you got to hold your hands up and say they really were. They were dominating us in every aspect.
And they scored a brilliant goal.
Yeah, they did. And for a player that shouldn't be playing, but that's by the by. You're talking about a team that were dominating us for every aspect of the game pretty much for that first 20 minutes. But when we did get to grips with things, you know, we were passing it out the back. We were passing it around Arsenal. We were getting it to the other side of the pitch. It was just so frustrating how the moves kept breaking down each and every single time by the final pass being really, really poor. But halftime whistle goes. Obviously, first of all, let's talk about the penalty before halftime. Richarlison gets completely hacked by Gabriel, and it was a stonewall penalty. Harry Kane slots it down the middle.
And even that penalty situation, though, came from Son overhitting a pass to Richarlison. True. He was in on goal. Yeah. If he gets the pass right, Richarlison's one-on-one with Ramsdale. He overhits it, forces Richarlison all the way out wide, and we kind of luckily, Xhaka makes a mistake to allow Richarlison to nick the ball back, and we kind of luckily get a situation where we earned the penalty. But Richarlison does really well to draw the foul out of Gabriel, and it was a definite penalty. Kane slots it home, makes it 1-1. And I think at that moment as well, when we did score, like we were definitely getting back in the game. So it wasn't like completely against the run of play when we did score.
I probably think, I mean, I haven't spoken to any Arsenal fans after the game yesterday, but I would expect that at half time they were slightly worried with the way we were growing into the game, because I was happy at half time. I was really happy.
Yeah, I think the first half was a really interesting tactical battle between two different philosophies. It was actually a really good game of football. Arsenal were having all the possession and they were playing pretty football, but they were restricted low quality chances. Spurs were playing out the back, and I actually thought when we did play out the back, everyone talks about how we Spurs fans get worried when we play out the back. I actually thought we did it in the first half really well.
You were still worried though.
Of course you're worried, but we did it really well. We're actually beating their press, and we're actually getting it to midfielders, getting it to the front three pretty consistently. And against an Arsenal side whose pressing was really intense, I thought it was actually really impressive how we were able to play out the back for the last 20 minutes of the first half, and we were doing it really well. And the just big frustration is we didn't make the most of it. We didn't make the most of those things. And I think if we did have someone like Kulusevski there, or just a player who's making better decisions in the final third, it would have been a different story. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. That we had who we had, and I'm not saying that should have been good enough. Like Son and Richarlison should have been playing much better passes. And I've always said about Richarlison, it's my biggest frustration with him. His final third passing. It's not even his decision making; it's his execution of his passes. They're so consistently over or under hit. Happened a few times yesterday, and I think Son was the biggest culprit out of all of them.
He was.
His passing was in the final third was just nowhere near good enough. But you got the feeling that if we kept up that momentum, kept restricting Arsenal and they're going to keep coming at us. If we can keep finding those positions, we're going to find, especially if Harry Kane's the one picking up in the final third, we'll find one or two opportunities to get chance on goal. But unfortunately, first of all, we had a chance with Romero straight after half-time. We didn't make the most of it. And then a couple minutes later, we're 2-1 down. Bad mistake from Lloris and Romero. Almighty mix-up between both of them. Lloris obviously more at fault because, first of all, he shouldn't parry it straight to Romero, and then he should have claimed it after Romero, kind of tried to see it out to him. It was a horrible, horrible moment for Hugo. And all the whole week we've been talking him up, and I've been banging on about how he's much better than Ramsdale. So he picked the perfect time to make a howler. But you just put it, look, for me, I saw a tweet yesterday saying, Spurs' game plan was undone because Hugo makes his usual mistake. I'm like, have you watched him this season? I'm thinking, like, do people watch Tottenham and Hugo Lloris on a consistent
what happens?
basis?
They look at a mistakes compilation on YouTube, be like, oh, this guy makes a mistake every single game. The guy is a high class keeper. He's a quality keeper, and I have no time for the Hugo abuse. I really don't, because when you're looking at it, like I've said so consistently over the years, when people always question Hugo, you're not going to bring in a keeper that is going to be better than Hugo Lloris week in, week out. Hugo Lloris is a world-class keeper, and he is, and all world-class keepers make mistakes. Alisson makes mistakes, Ederson makes mistakes, and these are the two keepers
Makes loads of mistakes.
Neuer makes mistakes, you know what I mean? And these are the two keepers in the Premier League that everyone clamours about. These are the best two keepers by far in the Premier League, but they make mistakes as well. So, look, obviously it's a terrible mistake to make at a very terrible time in the game, and it was pivotal because of the Emerson red card, but I still want him as my number one. He's an absolutely brilliant keeper, and he'll make up for it next game.
Then as well.
He was coming for cross. I mean, his distribution in the first half was...
No, there was only one moment where it went wrong. Other than that, I think he was pretty okay, actually. I think his distribution was all right, apart from that one moment.
Yeah, I think there was another moment in there that I think we won the ball back quite quickly, but that was the one moment you're talking about as the only one that we came under pressure from. I think that his distribution was a bit questionable in the first half, but apart from that, he was making good saves. He was coming for crosses. He was doing really well. And unfortunately, that mishap pretty much, I wouldn't say cost us the game, but it was definitely a big nail in our coffin to costing us the game, because straight after that, about 5-10 minutes later, Emerson does what Emerson does and gets sent off, and the game's effectively over after that. But what the hell is Emerson doing? And I was praising him at halftime. I thought he had a really good first half up against Martinelli. I know Martinelli did get the better of him once or twice, but I think
there was one moment Jesus spun him like really badly. In the first half. I think he dealt with Martinelli pretty well, actually.
Yeah, I think for the most part he had a really good first half, and I thought defensively he was standing up to the challenge more times than he wasn't. But you cannot do what he did. I mean, whether you think it's a sending off or not is irrelevant. Martinelli is going towards his goal in our own half, in their own half, and he makes a challenge that just doesn't need to be made.
Yeah.
Just doesn't need to be made. I mean, what is he doing? I watch it. I've watched it back like 5 or 6 times now, and every time I watch it, it gets stupider and stupider every time I watch it.
And apparently Conte was actually on the touchline going mad at Emerson even before the red card was shown. So he was angry about that, just the foul, the fact he's making a foul. I remember at that moment, if you watch it back as well, we're actually penning Arsenal in pressure-wise. We're actually pressing quite well in that moment to try and force it backwards. And obviously it was working because Martinelli was going back towards his own corner flag. So I remember, I think it was Ryan who was sitting next to him. He's like, don't foul, don't foul, he's shouting, don't foul, just like keep putting them under pressure. Obviously Emerson makes the foul in the end, and that was frustration enough. Just the fact that he made that a foul in that instance was frustrating enough. The fact that he ended up getting sent off out of that situation makes it a completely brainless moment. I've watched it back several times. I don't think it's a red card. I really don't. I think it's harsh. I think if you slow it down and you get freeze frames, it really looks a lot worse than it was, in my opinion, because if you take the challenge in real time, like he put a foot in, but it wasn't like he was going at 100 miles an hour and it could have been a leg breaker. Yeah, he made contact at that area, but it wasn't like there was a lot of speed and force in that challenge where it was like it could have broken his ankle. I really don't believe it was that kind of bad of a challenge.
I agree with you.
Yellow card is probably fair.
I agree with you. I thought it was a yellow card challenge, but the fact of the matter is he's giving the referee a decision to make.
I don't disagree with that, and I think the fact of the matter is he can't have any complaints because it was just so stupid. When you're that dumb when you're making that kind of challenge, it's hard to defend you, to say, because it wasn't a great challenge and it was a yellow card. It was a bad challenge. I'm not saying it was good by any stretch. It was definitely a bad challenge, but I do think the ref could have given that a yellow. No one would have said anything, and I don't think VAR would have overturned it. And I think it was a harsh red. And I think obviously once that red goes in, and then a few minutes later we're 3-1 down, and that's game over. The only thing I would say is I think Conte, I don't know if how long it was between the red card and the goal, but could he have made changes before the goal? Because if I remember rightly, correct me if I'm wrong, Emerson got the red card, and then there was a good 2-3 minute wait, while Martinelli was getting some treatment.
I'm about to tell you. So the red card was on 62, and then we made the changes at 71.
I'm saying, when did they score the first?
Oh, sorry, the score, it was 5 minutes.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure Martinelli was lying on the ground for a couple of minutes.
Maybe.
Yeah, I remember this fairly well. I'm pretty sure he was on the ground for a couple of minutes getting treatment from the thing. So why did Conte wait until after his treatment to make the subs, and after we conceded? Why didn't he make them before, especially when we needed to reorganise? Was a bit perplexing, but look, is what it is. Look, I'm not gonna look. It's a thing that just got bestowed upon him out of nowhere, so you can't. I'm not
yeah, but you need to be ready for those situations for sure. But the fact of the matter is as soon as Emerson got that red card, it was effectively, the game was effectively over.
Yeah,
and whether they score or not, we bring on those 5 changes, and then it's pretty much Conte waving the white flag, isn't it?
I don't think we would have done that at 2-1. I think at 3-1 you do it because it really is game over. At 2-1 you never know, because you get a set piece, you get something, and maybe you can make something, and you just keep it as tight as possible. And then if you maybe late in the game you can get a set piece, then you try and go for it. So I think at 2-1 he might have still kept those on, just a couple of, at least one of Richarlison or Son, just in case. But because it went 3-1, 2 goals down with 10 men, you're not getting back in the game. It's not possible. So I understand that.
It's so frustrating because everyone's going on about how we didn't deserve anything out the game. We wouldn't have got anything out the game even if Emerson was still on the pitch or whatever. But I don't care what anyone says. As much as how Arsenal dominated us for large periods of that game, however better they were for large periods of that game, if Emerson stays on that pitch with only 1 goal being in it, we're always in that game. We are always in that game. We saw it against Chelsea, how we can get a goal late on and get back in the game, claw ourselves back in the game when we're being dominated. You saw it in the first half, exactly how the game was going in waves. So, I mean, effectively, that game was ruined by Emerson Royale. I mean, as much as Arsenal were better than us, we could have got back into that game, and Emerson Royale just ruined it all for us.
He did. Look, he ruined the game. He didn't cost us the game, but he ruined the game. That's what you got to say. Because to say he cost us the game, we would have to been drawing or winning at the time to make that claim. But for sure, we would have had any opportunity we had to get back in the game or get something out of the game was cost by that red card, and that's the reality of the situation. So, I think if you're Antonio Conte and you're looking and you're ruining this game, I think. We were in the game massively. I think even you could argue playing well, maybe even better than Arsenal for the last part of that first half, and then within 15 minutes of the second half, the game's gone, and the game's gone away from you. So I don't think it's one of those games where you can just say everything was wrong, and I retweet saying I was wrong from the first minute and it was whatever. I don't think it was that kind of thing for me anyway. I just think. Sometimes this is gonna happen during a season. You'll have games like this where the game just gets away from you. And
it's
you have
just
to move
more
on
frustrating.
From
it's against Arsenal.
Yeah, and it happened to Arsenal on our ground. The game got away from them. After 20 minutes, they were down to 10 men and 2-0 down, and the game was over. So it happens during this.
And then you saw in that documentary how he was doing, trying to not get battered in that second half as well. The same thing as Conte did when he brought on those 5 changes.
And I think that's what you got to do in that situation. You don't want anything because imagine that turned to 4 or 5-1, and all of a sudden that becomes like a historical game. You just as long as we kept it at 3-1. We just move on from it. You take the loss, and that's it. You just got to make sure that you put it behind you and you make it right in the next games. What's interesting though, moving forward, a few things I would say. First of all, no Emerson for 3 games, and he's played I think he's played every Premier League game, hasn't he? What is Conte going to do? Is he going to do what he did against Leicester? Perisic on the right, Leicester on the left. Is Doherty or Spence going to get a chance now? That's going to be interesting. And one thing as well I want to say is for the last 20 minutes, I don't think anyone's picked up on it. I actually think Skip played pretty well.
Oh no, he was brilliant. He was brilliant. I mean, I noticed it when I was watching it, and I was like, every time the ball came near Skippy, he made brilliant challenges. He was spraying the ball as well. Really good energy about him. I mean, I really want to see him start to get minutes now. I really do, because I thought he was a bit of a positive yesterday from a pile of shit.
Yeah, exactly. So I was happy with his cameo. He looked bright and sharp again. But Ali Gold saying Basuma, one of the main reasons we didn't go 3-5-2 was Basuma still struggling with a physical problem, which was a bit of a worry.
So why didn't he play Skip then?
Yeah, I don't know. We could have played. Maybe he still doesn't think Skip's ready to start. I don't know. But that was a bit interesting as well. That was why Basuma. One of the reasons why Basuma was in the 11, but I've also, I think it's a recurring theme as well that when we don't have Kulusevski, that decision making in the final third just is completely lacking, and that is something that apparently we might have to part with now for a couple of weeks. While Kulusevski gets his scan, so we need those front players. Especially for me, Son and Richarlison, because we know how good Kane is with his final pass. We need them to start being more incisive and start actually being more precise with their passing, because it's not good enough to keep overhitting passes. When there are players of those quality, you can't tell when they can't pass a ball with the right way of pass and right accuracy. It's just lack of care. They've got to do much better in those situations, and unless they do, I'm worried that we might have a few more frustrating results over the next couple of weeks. I'm not saying we're not going to win a game, but there will be some games where it's just not clicking.
We've got 2 very difficult games in a row now. Frankfurt away and Brighton away. You saw what Brighton did at Anfield yesterday, 3-3. Really good performance in their first game under De Zerbi. I mean, we've got Frankfurt away, which is always going to be a tough game in the Champions League, where after that loss at Lisbon, it's actually quite an important game this week. So we're going to need to figure a way around this, because these 2 games are not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. You know how Brighton like to play their football, and there'll be chances for Brighton and they'll take them. Look, Trossard just got a hat-trick, for God's sake.
100%. And it's going to be interesting how we play those games, because obviously against Arsenal, in a weird way, even though they dominated and stuff, the way they play allowed space for the likes of Son and Richarlison to break into. They just didn't exploit it. Now, when they're restricted of that kind of space, especially against a team like Frankfurt, who we know like to sit back a bit, like how are they going to? Is that going to be better for them? Is that going to be worse for them? And also, maybe it's also something to bring up about our away form now, because I think when people talk about our poor performances, I think people are generally talking about our away performances. At home, we've won 5 out of 5. We've actually been pretty good at home this season, but away from home, we are starting to really struggle now.
But
I think why it's 1 win out of 5 now.
It is 1 win out of 5. To be fair, though, we have had very difficult away games this season.
Yeah, that's true.
Chelsea away, West Ham away, Arsenal away. Who's the other one? Forest away. And there was one more.
And Lisbon away.
And Lisbon away, right? Lisbon away, Champions League. Well, look, fair enough. We should have won that game.
They're all tough games.
Look, we should have won that game anyway. But when you're looking at the Premier League games, Arsenal, Chelsea and West Ham are 3 games where we notoriously struggle year in, year out, no matter who our manager is.
And we had the City game postponed. It could have been that one as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've had very difficult away games. So, when I'd like to see... I'd like to see a bigger sample size before really worrying about the away form, because, you know, we lost to Chelsea last year, we lost to West Ham last year, we lost to Arsenal last year, and we beat Forest anyway. So,
yeah, I think those are it's true, but I think even the Forest game, like, as much as we deserved the win, you know, we conceded a lot of control in that game. Lisbon, as much as we probably didn't deserve to lose, we didn't create enough clear-cut opportunities. So, I think our away performances is something that Conte has to address for me, and it's something that, not to be panicked about, but it's definitely a concern that needs to be looked at and think about why we're not performing away from home right now to maybe the standard that we want. But you're absolutely right, we've got those 3 really tough away games out the door, only 1 loss, 2 draws, and hopefully now we can go on a bit of a better run away from home and start getting more better results and better performances.
I'm just looking at the fixtures at the back end of last season to see what the away form was like there, and you know, you still might have a case, you know, because since Manchester United in March, we played them, obviously we lost 3-2, then we went to Brighton and we won. Then we went to Villa and won quite convincingly. But then,
Lloris had an unbelievable first half in that game.
That's true. That's true. But then Brentford 0-0, Liverpool 1-1. But then the Norwich game at the end. So mixed bag really at the back end of last season.
Yeah, and obviously these are difficult games. Liverpool away from home at Anfield, going for the title. It's a very tough game. Brentford can be a tough game. So these aren't the easiest of games, but I think our away form is. I don't know what it is about our away performances that's starting to really frustrate. And also, I'm just a tiny bit concerned that some of the criticism I'm hearing, or some of the stuff I hear us say, like, oh, it's because of this mistake from Lloris, that's why we didn't get a result, or because of these missing passes in the final third, that's why we didn't create the chances. It's very similar to what we used to say under Mourinho, and I know we're not the same team right now as we are under Mourinho. I believe we're much better. But I just don't like sometimes when relying on perfection to get a result. You have to have some leeway, and sometimes I feel like we have to be perfect to get a result. Sometimes, like in terms of like, you know, like not making mistakes and things like that. And that's just something to look at.
I don't agree with the fact that they're saying, people are saying like, oh, it's because of Lloris we lost that game. If Lloris doesn't make that mistake, we wouldn't have lost that game. I don't agree with that. I think that even with Lloris making that mistake, we could have won that game yesterday, or even taken a point yesterday. It was the Emerson decision, the Emerson thing that really screwed us. And anyone's going to struggle with 10 men on the pitch, especially 2-1 down at the Emirates.
Yeah, that's very true. But it's just something to watch out for, I guess. But look, it's still very early on. We're still 3rd in the league, and actually, like, I know we're only 4 points off top. It's not. We were 4 points behind Arsenal with how many games to go last year? 3 games to go. So with 30 games to go, it's all right. We're also pretty well situated in 3rd right now as well. And also the league table doesn't make too much of a difference anyway right now.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's 8 games gone. I mean, there's nothing much. But, you know, Spurs need to show bollocks now, though. We need to show some big bollocks going into these next 2 games against Frankfurt and against Brighton. We need to get results in both of these games to get ourselves back on track. Because if we don't, and if we have like a bit of a slump now in Frankfurt and Brighton, then the narrative changes on our season.
And I'm not gonna lie, I'm a bit concerned we might, but I'm hoping I'm wrong. But I'm thinking that they are going to be very tough games, and let's hope that Conte can pull out the bag for us.
Absolutely. So that is your match review for the damaging 3-1 loss at the Emirates yesterday in the North London derby. Let me know your thoughts on the game in the comment section below. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.
Bye.